through the transmission and distribution side all the way to the end customers. That is our role as the system operator. So this slide here is just showing where we get that mandate. The grid code through the license that is issued to Eskom gives us the mandate to maintain the grid. And just to give you an example, when we get to a point where we load shed, it's after we've exhausted all the other options in maintaining grid stability. So what is important is also to understand that the reliability, the safety and the security of the system is our responsibility. That is our key responsibility. All other activities are actually performed to support that main activity. That is very, very important. There is a separate license for system operation that is issued to Eskom to make sure that we don't compromise on grid stability. So what I'm going to share with you is an independent review of the system and how it's been performing over the years. We've actually gone back to 2015 to where we are today. Okay, this slide is just highlighting the fact that we don't operate this grid as an island. We are connected to most of our neighbors. The imports and exports of power, 1,000 megawatts, followed by the Natal with 6,000. This province where we are now is sitting at about 2,000 megawatts of demand. Okay, in terms of the generation capacity in the country, we're sitting at about 50 gigawatts. The peak demand last year was about 35 gigawatt. So you can also see what we're getting from Eskom side, which is mainly the top technologies that you see there. That's the different technologies. And Eskom in total about 45, 46 disturbances that are becoming a concern for us as a system operator. And then on the day, this is a typical demand profile in South Africa. It's a summer profile. The way we see that is because it's flat. So the demand picks up in the morning from about 4 a.m. It stays flat for most of the day, and then we have an evening peak. So if I want to see that the difference between summer and winter, in winter you do get some kind of a saddle here. The difference there is because of the summer profile has aircon load which kicks in during the day to create that flat profile. Also important to note is that we still get a lot of our production from thermal coal power stations, and that is giving us anywhere between 20 and 28,000 megawatts on a given day. You will hear later on that we do have a lot of challenges in the thermal coal-fired power station side, and if we don't sort out those issues, we are going to have problems in managing the grid going forward. So over and above the coal, which unfortunately is a black color, but it's got nothing to do with coal itself. The next one is that is the import from Korabas, followed by nuclear. In this case, we've also taken intentionally included the day that we had to load shed. So you see that light blue color, it's actually the load shed that was implemented on this particular day. So which means that on this day, we didn't have enough generation capacity to meet the load. And then at the top, you will also see the PVs. PV comes in the morning, usually after the morning peak. In summer, at least, it comes in a bit earlier. In winter, it becomes a problem because it comes after the morning peak. And as you can see here, it disappears just before the evening peak. And then wind, and you don't get this phenomenon all the time, where throughout the day it continues to pick up, and it gives us nice high production during the evening peak. It only happens in summer. In winter, the situation is different. And being in the Eastern Cape, this is the biggest contributor of wind production in the country. Okay, what I was talking about earlier in terms of the different profile, the blue, it's the winter profile. You can see that the two peaks are pronounced, the morning peak and as well as the evening peak. In summer, you have this flat demand throughout the day. The significance of this is if you're sitting with a flat demand like this, that means whatever resources you commit for the day will have to run throughout the day. So if you don't have enough capacity, then you end up having to load shed the whole day. Whereas in winter, you might have a problem just for the morning peak and the evening peak. And then the other significance of this is that we do have emergency resources like open cycle gas turbines and the pump storages, which we prefer by design that they should be run at least for the morning and the evening, not more than that. But in summer we do have challenges, which is what we faced in November and December last year, where the load is flat. If you start running open cycle gas turbines in the morning, you end up having to run them throughout the day. Okay, just to give you an idea of what happens in managing the grid. The green space is when you have enough capacity, you're able to meet your demand. And as you drop down to the darker colors, it means you're now exhausting all your emergency resources. So ideally, we will want to run the system at this level, where you've got enough capacity coming from your conventional generation. But what we have seen lately, we're actually playing a lot in this space. A lot of gas turbines and a lot of emergency hydro being used, as well as interruptible load shedding. And just to highlight as well, once we have exhausted all of this, then the last avenue is just to go into load shedding. We have enough processes, as you can see here, to try and avoid the blackout in the country. So that is a very, very unlikely scenario. So now I'm going to talk about what we have been seeing in the last few months, specifically starting from November 2017. The plant performance on the ESCOM generation side has been dropping, and it has been a concern to us. We have raised it with ESCOM, and our message here, Chairperson, is that we need to do something about this as a country. This is showing, and I understand generation will go into this in detail, it's just showing the plant performance. What is key is to look at the light blue color at the bottom. Starting from April 2017, the availability factor was about 81%. And where we are now, by end of December 2018, we're sitting at 63%. This is the reason why we had to load shed. The plant was not performing, and the reasons thereof will be shared by our colleagues from generation. On the renewable side, we do have challenges, but I think we are getting better at understanding the performance of renewable power plants. So, and the significance thereof is still very minimal. We have not seen any major impact on the grid to date. Obviously, the situation will change as we get more and more renewables integrated. This is just showing the production. We picked the month of December. December is quite good. You get good wind. You also get good renewable production. So the highest we have seen, which was not in December, it was around September. It's about 3,300 megawatts out of the 3,300 instantaneous production, out of the 3,800 megawatts of installed capacity of renewables. Okay, this is just showing the production. Again, the shaded area is the daily profile, using the scale on the right. And then the blue color is showing the wind production, which, as I said earlier, it's actually coincidentally gives us nice high production during the evening peak. And then solar is the green, which comes on more or less with the morning peak, stays on during the day, but unfortunately it disappears just as we climb in the evening peak. And then the red color is the CSP, which the storage is not that good, so we do get a few hours of production towards the evening. And then the other aspect which I spoke about, this is just talking about the wind production. What is key is what we have seen lately is that wind, we seem to get a lot of wind production in summer. So that's summer, Jan 2017, and then that is a summer of towards the December 17 and early 2018. So we are starting to now see the trend of wind production, which is also helping us in the planning the system. However, we need to keep in mind that wind is still very difficult to predict. As much as we can see the trend, but in real time or on a given day, we're still seeing this magnitude of the difference between today and tomorrow. This is just giving an example. This was in August last year, where in one day we got 200 megawatt production from wind. The very next day we got 1,200. This was taken over evening peak. So it's still very much variable. But as I said, the impact we can still absorb if we have conventional generation that is performing. And then I'm just going to talk about the accuracy. This is what we're seeing. It's getting better and better over the years as we get more experience in the running of renewables. The important one is just look at normalized mean average peak error, where for PV is quite easy to forecast. We know that the sun is going to shine tomorrow, and when it shines, it starts picking up at around 6 a.m. Then you get your peak by 8, 9, and then it stays there for the whole day, and it starts dropping at around 1500 towards sunset. So PV, we're doing well. We're sitting at about 5% accuracy level. Wind is a different story. It's still very much variable. We're sitting at about 10% accuracy level in terms of prediction of the forecast. Okay, so those challenges that we've seen, especially on the conventional generation side, we do have our own indicators as system operator to see how the overall system is performing. And I must emphasize, when we talk about the system, we're not talking about the ESCOM system, we're talking about the South African grid. We have to manage all the different generators, including the rooftop PV that is sitting on the houses. We have to make sure we manage all the fluctuations. But we rely heavily on ESCOM generation. We're supplying at least 90% from ESCOM for the country. And that obviously has an impact if there's no performance. We already spoken about ESCOM declining performance. As a result of that, our first indicator is the amount of open cycle gas turbines that we are using. This is going back to 2015. We'll all remember that in 2015 we had load shedding in the country, and we utilized a lot of diesel generators during that time. Then we had 2016-17 where we were running these generators just to meet the reliability requirement. And from about November 2017, we're starting to see a pickup in the utilization of diesel generators. And this is a sign that things are not going well on the conventional generation side. The other sign is supplemental demand response. These are the customers that voluntarily agree to be interrupted if we don't have enough generators. Again, you see the same trend. In 2015, thereabout, we're using a lot of this demand response products, and it drops during 2017, and then we are seeing a pickup again to a point that at some level we were utilizing more than what we did in 2015. Obviously, that has a double whammy on the ESCOM side. It's a loss of revenue side of things as well. And then the next one is interruptible load shedding. This again, it's the special agreement with the smelters. You can see the bar charts is the number of times we have called them, and then the blue line is the energy that we've been utilizing from these products. Again, the same trend. 2015, we've been utilizing them a lot while we're load shedding, and we're still we're starting to see the trend going up towards those levels. The only difference between that level and that level is that now we've got a little bit more additional capacity with the MYPD and Kusile online. Okay, another indicator that we use on our side is the amount of pump storage that we utilize. Again, we've been saying that we're not even able to meet our dam level requirement on the Monday morning. Same, you'll see that on Friday afternoon, back in 2015, we were utilizing a lot of this pump storage. We're back to those days again. And then on the reserve side, this is the amount of reserve that we have to maintain on the grid to cater for any disturbances. And this is just showing where we rely on ESCOM to provide this reserves. It doesn't mean that we are compromising the grid, Chairperson. Zero means we basically don't get any reserve from ESCOM. That was back in 2015. We didn't have enough from these conventional generators. Then we had this time period where we're getting even more than what we require. We need about 2,000 megawatts. In this case, we had units in coal reserve. Now where we are, we actually don't get enough reserves in some days. And this is just measuring during the evening peak. Obviously, outside the peaks, we do have excess capacity available. This one is just summarizing the load shedding events that we had in November, December, based on the reasons that I highlighted earlier in the presentation. Chairperson, in conclusion, all we are presenting from the system operation side is that we are concerned about the current state of the system. The grid is telling us something and we have to listen and do something about it. That's our message. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairperson, panel, and ladies and gents. Okay, so we've seen how the system moderator integrates with generation, and now I'm going to tell you a bit about how we manage our power plants, particularly the maintenance of the plants. A bit about more detail about the performance currently and historically, some of the background to that situation, and then what we're going to do about it, and what we are doing about it. To put things into perspective, as Bernard mentioned, most of our production is in the Pumalanga area because that's where the coal is, with some, particularly Kuwait down in the Cape, and some of the open cycle gas turbines. But the load is distributed all over the country in the major centres. So, how we decide what maintenance needs to be done. Each power plant has a life of plant plan that tells us over the life of the plant how much maintenance, particularly what we call philosophy maintenance, the major interventions that needs to be done. These are further refined down into a technical plan over a shorter time period, etc. And then eventually we come with the capacity plan, which I'll get into more detail later, that schedules the outages when they're required. The production plan inside of it is it tells us how much energy we need for each power station effectively. At the same time, the life of plant plan, as you can see down at the bottom, includes what major interventions are required, specifically what's advised by the owners of, the developers of each component in the system, etc. And these are, it varies for every station, in every unit it varies, but this is a generalized view of what is required over the life of the station. Okay, this here is our capacity outlook. So what we do here to explain it is we have our installed capacity, and we make an assumption of how much unplanned maintenance is going to be required, how much of the capacity is going to be lost at each time. And typically it is more in summer than in winter. and we say this is our UCLF allowance. Then we look at what maintenance needs to be done. We take the operating reserve that Bernard was telling you about, and that's the gas, and that's our available base capacity. The black line is what the demand is expected to be, what we project it to be. So the maintenance we plan adjusts by changing that plan. It adjusts where that line is. And as you can see from this, it eats into the gas. So now we've got this minimum amount of maintenance that we need to do. So we fit it in as best as we can in a puzzle like Tetris. That's why we came up with that idea. So we put it in blocks. And here you can see we are going to need to use gas. Assuming that that happens and that the demand is different from what we are. But these are assumptions. The other interesting point about this is here you can see some gaps. So this is quite far in the future. So there is potential there to do more maintenance. Okay, but there are other constraints. We'll talk about later. Okay, so the key principle we use for the production planning is obviously we use the merit order dispatch and on a planning basis as well as on the day ahead that Bernard was telling you about. Okay, and this is primarily based on the primary energy cost, the coal or the gas, the diesel, etc. Okay, now the production plan, as I said, uses this as a basis for scheduling the stations that that we need to meet the projected demand. Okay, and that tells us how much energy we expect to be required from each station, and then if you sum them up for the different types of station, this is what we come up with. And this is what is in the application. Okay. Now, there are, okay, here we are. And this is a summary of what we're going to need to produce from the generation plant. The darker blue bars are the imports, and this lighter grey color are your IPPs. As you can see, the Eskom generation remains roughly constant over this whole period from 2018 financial year, and actually drops from next year, whereas the energy to produce from IPPs more than doubles. So, to produce the production plan, we have to make a number of assumptions. In fact, lots of assumptions. We need to know what the capacity is, the specifics of the units, the operating characteristics of the units. So for example, because it's done on an hourly basis, you need to know how fast the units can ramp up and down. That's our ramp rates. You need to know how stable they are at low generation so that they can ramp up, etc. For this, particularly in winter. They can be operating at a low level during the day and ramp up for the evening peaks, etc. You need to know how much maintenance you need to do. You need to make an assumption of how much unplanned maintenance is going to happen and other impacts. And then of course the cost. So these three here, your PCLF, UCLF and OCF are unavailabilities, and the inverse of that obviously is your availability. So effectively those tell you how much of the plant is available on an hourly basis. Then you need to know what supply we get from outside of Eskom. We need to know what the forecast is, how much operating reserve we need, and all of this is optimized. So our whole planning is based on this production plan, because from it we need to know how much primary energy we're going to need, not just the fuel, the water, etc. We need to know, so that gives us all our cost predictions, our emissions, our carbon, environmental taxes, levies, etc. So all of that. The key point I want to get from this is there's a lot of assumptions we have to make. Okay, so if we look at a generalized view of this, just an illustrative view of the assumptions, at a high level for the application, we assumed that EF was going to be 78%. And as Caleb pointed out, these were done roughly a year ago. At that time, our EAF was in this range, in fact even a little better than that. and we also have to assume the new builds. We have used the latest best estimates on the commissioning dates of our new build station in Kusile. We had to make certain assumptions on when the renewable IPPs came in. We looked at a realistic demand growth, and the results of all of this showed that not all of the stations would be required to meet the demand. Some of them would have zero production in the production plan. That didn't mean that we definitely wouldn't need them, but with that scenario, they didn't need to produce electricity from various periods in the application over the next 3 years. However, we were very cognizant even then that the performance was variable. We were cognizant of the challenges we were facing, and therefore we said, because of the high level of uncertainty in the assumptions we made, let's do a stress test. So we said, what happens if the EAF is only 75%? What happens if the new build doesn't come on as quickly, etc., etc.? What happens if demand was a bit higher? Then that showed that, well, we definitely don't want to decommission these stations, but we could still shut them down as they require major capex to come on, mostly because of financial constraints. So we keep them as a reserve storage. It's like an insurance policy in case they were required in the future. Okay, and this is the same slide that Bernard showed you earlier. And as you can see, well, even the stress test case of 75% was incorrect. So our performance lately has declined even further. I think it's important to note that it's not only a case of higher, and although that is a major contributor, of higher unplanned maintenance, higher failures, we have also had to increase our planned maintenance. And part of this is because we did a low amount of maintenance in this area here. So where our availability looked very good here, part of the contributing factor was that we did very low planned maintenance. A number of reasons for this, but one of the key reasons was the financial constraints at the station. Okay. At the same time, you can see how, even though this is our load factor, how hard the plant is running. As you can see, the dip here is because of the December, the holiday period. But during this period, you can see how the EUF, that EUF is our energy utilization factor. It basically tells you how much of the possible energy when the plant is available is it actually producing. It's like running hard. As it goes up, it shows that the stations are running hard. As you can see, that levels over 80% is very, very high. Okay, so because of this and because the application assumptions are made a year ago, we said, okay, we need to relook at the production plan. The world now is totally different from what it was a year ago. So let's look at what is more realistic at the moment. So these are the assumptions we made in terms of, the important one here is the 78. That tells us how much is available. It's just a factor of these what's there. Our current performance is more in this range. So we say, let's say we improve a bit. So these are now assumptions in a revised production plan we did. At the same time, because of this, we could not possibly keep our OCGT load factor constrained to 1%. We had to unconstrain it for the production plan modeling. But also, we've got more information on the sales forecast, so we lowered the sales forecast. We also relooked at the commissioning dates of the new build stations, and although some of them are now slightly accelerated, these ones didn't happen, so we've got the later dates there. So that's been updated. Now, what does that show us? That shows us that SQ production drops even further. The IPPs and import stays roughly the same. The SQ production drops significantly. It also means that we're going to need more of the OCGTs. So particularly in the first year, mostly due to the fact that the new build units will be coming on later, and also because the EF in the model is improving slightly, up to 15%. This is what the production plan shows. and it does decline back to, I think we need to bear in mind that the original business case for these OCGTs was in this region. So this is totally out of the bounds of what we expected when we built them. Okay, now let's talk about why we are where we are. Okay, firstly, we've spoken lots and I'll touch on it later, but there's essential planned maintenance specifically to address safety and statutory requirements. Because obviously we can't do that. And we also, if we want to improve, we have to do performance-related work. Specifically, well, I'll come to that in